And I'll pass it back over to Patrick.
All right, thanks, Doug. Tonight we are very excited to be joined by Colleen Echohawk. She's running for mayor of Seattle. She's also the executive director of the Chief Seattle Club, a nonprofit homeless service organization that is currently building $100 million of new affordable housing in the city for urban Indians. She's also a member of the Seattle Community Police Commission, among many other hats that she wears. But I will let her tell you the rest about herself and her vision for our city. Take it away, Colleen. Yeah. You are muted, Colleen. Oh, she can't unmute.
Here we go. Someone
There
just
we go.
unmuted me. Doug.
That's my bad.
No problem. Well, it's so good to be with you all. I'm so excited. This has been quite the journey to get here, to be running for mayor of Seattle. As Doug mentioned, I've done a lot of other things, but feel so concerned and so excited about the possibilities for our city that I'm jumping in to do this. So thank you all for being here. And I really mean that, because I don't know about you all, but this has been one of the hardest years of my life. I have worried about my kids, about my parents. We all were worried about Trump. And when you're going through something hard, it can be really hard to look towards the future. So it's really heartening to see all of you here, to get to talk about some really great opportunities for our city as it moves forward. And to begin with, I just want to tell you a little bit about my background. I was born and raised in a rural Alaska town called Delta Junction with 7 siblings. My family ran a small motel, and I grew up cleaning rooms and working that front desk. My Uncle John started the Native American Rights Fund. My Uncle Larry was the Democratic Attorney General of Idaho. And I'm so proud of my grandmother, Katie John, from the Copper River area in Metasta Lake, a tiny little village. About 50 people there right now, if you went. And she fought a 30-year legal battle for subsistence fishing and hunting rights all the way to the federal courts. And she won that in a landmark decision. And I come from a family that is no stranger to tough fights. And I want to tell you why I'm stepping forward to run for mayor. I'm running because right now, Seattle has some huge challenges. But we also have the potential to turn this around and get it right. A once in a generational opportunity. And while we confront many problems, such as police accountability and how we will recover from COVID and the urgency of climate change, I believe the crisis we have to immediately tackle is the homelessness emergency. In this election this year will be on November 2nd. 6 years ago to the day on November 2nd in 2015, the mayor and the city council declared a state of emergency over homelessness. They pulled the fire alarm, but they didn't send any fire trucks. And there's been so much finger pointing and infighting, and the culture in City Hall has become toxic. And we have more of our neighbors experiencing homelessness than ever before. Tonight, somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 people will sleep on our streets. How did we get to this place where we have such a humanitarian crisis in a city like Seattle that's full of prosperity and opportunity? We know we can do better, and we're so frustrated and angry that we're not doing a better job. So what do? Day one of an Echohawk administration starts with an emergency housing program. The goal is simple. We find warm and dry and safe places for everyone. We treat this like the emergency it is. It means an all of the above approach: more shelter space, hotel rooms, tiny houses, RV parks, and other community-led solutions. I know there's other answers out there. And there will be no sweeps until there's a place to sleep. And because it makes 0 sense to remove encampments until there's that warm and dry, safe place to move to. I know from personal experience that if there's a better option, 98% of people experiencing homelessness will take that better option. We just have to find out what that is and make it happen. And as soon as we have that place for people to go, we end the practice of allowing people to camp in city parks and public right-of-ways. But how do we do all this? How do we succeed when there's been so much failure? First, we have to put the past behind us. No enemies, no grudges. We start fresh and we treat it like the emergency it is. Some of you who know me on this call, you know I just like people. I love building partnerships, hearing new ideas, and putting assumptions aside. So after the election, I'll use that transition period to bring all parts of our community together. Government, business, higher ed, philanthropic community, urbanist. We all live in Seattle and we're in this together. The day I get sworn in, we hit the ground running with a plan. This will be my number one top priority as mayor. I believe that my life experience has uniquely prepared me to meet this moment in our city's history. 7 years ago, I became the head of Chief Seattle Club, which helps urban Native people who are experiencing homelessness in Seattle. And in the last few years, we've started to build housing. We've had some amazing successes. We're opening 80 studio units this October and another 125 units next June. And we have an amazing project that's 80 units of housing in North Seattle that hasn't even been officially announced yet. Some of you are, this is some of the first times we're talking about it. It's so exciting, and it has been such opportunity and a journey for me to become a developer of low-income housing. We had to work with local governments in order to make it happen. And one of the projects we're super proud of is a project called Eagle Village. We put surplus FEMA trailers on an unused parking lot in Soto. It's a beautiful community, and it shows what can happen when we think creatively and work together. Chief Seattle Club has excellent rates of keeping people in their housing. And I am so proud of that work and so happy to help my relatives who've been experiencing homelessness. Because I am so tired of the status quo. I'm tired of having good solutions and knowing other people that have good solutions, but we're not heard. The bureaucracy is so heavy with no willingness to try new things and new approaches. Well, you know it's hard. I've been doing hard things every single day for a while now. And I am so happy and excited to think about doing those hard things at the mayor's office and make generational change for our community. I have been working in that housing justice space. And you know, what does that really mean? It means that we share a moral framework about certain inalienable rights that people should have in regards to shelter. We have to advocate for policy to guarantee those rights. And it goes even further than that. Once we have the policy, we have to implement that policy, create the programs and get people into those programs. We also have to make sure that it's just and equitable. We have to make sure that our Black, Indigenous, and people of color community are leading these projects. That's what I mean when I say we work for housing justice. And it's not just housing justice. My friends in climate justice community, the same thing. Healthy air and clean water should be inalienable for everyone, not just the rich. Those are core human values. That's why my grandma Katie fought so hard for those rights, for sustainability, and for subsistence on our traditional homelands. And as you know, this is not an easy process. We have to talk about what it means to say not just yes on housing justice and not just yes on climate justice, but also on mobility justice. I'm doing town halls all over the city now, virtually, just like we're doing tonight. And I'm hearing about pedestrian safety. I'm hearing about really long walks to catch a bus that doesn't come often enough. I'm reading about the 25% of Washingtonians that don't have a driver's license yet. But we have a transportation system that caters 100% to cars. I also think about the data that shows Black cyclists are cited at 4 times the rate as white cyclists for not wearing a helmet. These are all different issues, but they are really the same. They are all issues of mobility justice. And let me say it again, mobility justice, just like housing justice and just like climate justice, is part of the plan. That's that missing third leg of the stool in Seattle right now. And as we develop our transportation system in Seattle and the Northwest, these are the 3 pillars we must build that foundation on: housing justice, climate justice, and mobility justice. And let me be really clear. This is an organizing principle where our values turn into action. It affects all our planning and all our decisions. We just don't build transportation systems for the wealthy, but we build them for everyone. And I don't know all the policy decisions to achieve this goal. I'm here to listen and hear from you how we can achieve that mobility justice and live out our values. Finally, I just want to close with this. I love this city. I love living in Seattle. And it's so funny because I came from such a small, tiny place in rural Alaska. I love living in the Coast Salish territories. Thank you so much for recognizing that today. And I am so filled with hope and vision for this native city. We're one of the only major cities in the country that's named after a chief. And I have had a very unlikely path towards urbanism. I grew up in that little tiny town. A lot of the people that I grew up around, we were really proud of our isolation and our acres of property, and the bigger the truck, the better. But at the same time, I have always been rooted in the ideas of density, community, and abundant public transportation. I'm an enrolled member of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma, and I would argue that Indigenous people in this country were the original urbanists. Our Pawnee villages in Nebraska and Kansas were carefully planned for easy access to water, abundant gardens. Our sewage systems were amazing. Some of our agricultural methods are just amazing, groundbreaking science. We had earth lodges that were our modes of housing, and they were densely populated and inherently environmentally friendly. They were cozy and warm in the winters and cool in the summer. Our transportation systems were mostly walking and then horses, and we did move. Our villages moved, and we followed the buffalo, and it was done with precision. It was done with amazing planning, and it was done with leadership. And when our villages would move around and we'd be in the plains in Nebraska and Kansas, there would be high grass. And in that, as we began to move, there would be people that were sent out ahead, and they were called the grass dancers. You can actually see them in powwow communities now. But the grass dancers would go ahead, and their job was to push down the grass and prepare the way for the people, prepare the way for the vulnerable, prepare the way for those folks who had babies and the elders. And so that they could walk with the community to the next place where we're going to, sustain our community. And that grass dancer was bold and courageous. They were looking ahead and watching for what was coming so that the community could be safe and the community could be sustainable. And this is what we need in our city now. We need bold and courageous leadership, just like those grass dancers. Someone who will go out and make the pathways and truly lead, make those decisions that have to be made and stand by them. We need a new generation of leadership, someone who's rooted in tradition, sustainability, and hope for a city that works for the rich and the poor and Indigenous and non-Indigenous and business owners and all of our essential workers, and for our teachers, so we can all live and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful city. So join me. Thank you so much for letting me be here tonight. Let's build a people first city. And one of the best ways you can help me out with that is those democracy vouchers. You can send them in. What a beautiful thing to have those democracy vouchers. It allows someone like me who doesn't come from generational wealth, doesn't come from a lot of money, doesn't come from a lot of, I just don't have those resources, right? But democracy vouchers helps level that playing field, and I would be so honored to earn them from you all. And I just want to now take the time to hear from you, answer your questions, hear your ideas, and just talk stories. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. That was great. So I want to start off with some bigger theme questions. I think one of the things that some of us have felt is lacking right now is vision. And you've talked about like your 3 overarching themes. Yeah. But if you're elected and in 4 or 8 years, looking back after that, what would you specifically hope to have accomplished? And what have you hoped to have changed in our city?
Number one, I would hope that we will have ended homelessness in the city once and for all. It is, to me, totally immoral that we have such incredible rates of homelessness in such a prosperous city. In some ways, I was talking to some folks earlier about this, that, you think about, refugee camps and the global South and areas where, war-torn areas. We have similar looking camps right now in the city. We have people who are suffering and who are hurting. And we know that and I can tell you from firsthand experience, our homeless community does not enjoy what they're going through. Our neighborhoods don't enjoy it. We are not thriving in the way that we should thrive when our homeless community is so large and we're not doing enough for it. We did not treat it like the emergency it truly is. So that's what if I would look back from 4 to 8 years from now, or from November, January, it would be that we have truly gotten to functional zero, and then also gotten, I think we can if we plan, if we execute, and we have leadership, we can make sure that this truly is happening. And then the other thing that's super exciting for me is, and I should add that we have to build enough housing to go for that. I mean, I have an emergency plan for like right away, but then we have to build housing. And I think that the other thing I would say is that we have to break down the barriers around housing, and we have to figure out ways, affordable housing, and figure out new ways of affordable housing systems. That's when I started building housing, I was literally laughed at when I brought it forward to the city, honestly. And they laughed and said, Colleen, your agency's too small. You don't know what to do. You don't have enough capacity. And I would look forward to tearing down those barriers and gatekeeping and seeing not people like me, people in the Black community, in our refugee community, to have access to building housing. And there's a lot of barriers we have to break down in order to do that. We have to change our zoning laws. And so that's a big priority for me as part of the way that we have to solve for homelessness. And then transportation is so exciting for me, and an opportunity to do something better. I would, 8 years from now, wouldn't it be great if everyone, if it was free, if we could just find ways that everyone could just be on public transportation, and change some of our systems that have, encouraged just driving in your car. I know that for me, when the Rapid Line came in, I was always, the 365 had been my best forever. I loved it. It's very always interesting. And then when Rapid Line and the E-Line came, it just was life-changing for me. There were times when I thought about taking the bus, but I knew I don't know when it's coming. It's going to be whatever. Now Rapid Line is amazing. So those are some big ideas of ways that I think that we can be having vision for a city that truly works. I guess I'll quit with this and on this question. We need to be a city that everyone can truly prosper and live a good life, right? It's heartbreaking to me that when through this pandemic, we had the Chief Seattle Club, we stayed open every single day. We had people who were busing down to Seattle from places like Mill Creek, and they were barely making more than minimum wage. That is unacceptable. We need to have a city where our essential workers can live and enjoy this place just like the rest of us who live here. And that's going to take some dedicated and focused attention on equity and racial justice. And I think I am the right leader for that. So thank you, Patrick. As you could tell, could go on for a long time.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. You're full of ideas, and hopefully we'll see more of them. So you're talking about big picture changes. One of the biggest opportunities for large scale change in our city, if you're elected, would be the comprehensive plan update. It's going to start this year, and then it's supposed to be adopted in 2024. And it's really sets our long-term vision. The last one was pretty conservative in how it approached it. It was basically 3 versions of the status quo.
Yeah.
What would be your approach to the comprehensive plan, and what would you like to see changed in it?
Yeah. Well, my approach would be, one, to have it be as community-led as possible. I'm not sure what the other planning processes were like, but I know that often community who's most affected by by the comprehensive plan or other plans of the city are not at the table and are not heard and are not given that opportunity to understand. One thing that has been an overarching theme for me as I've built housing is the recognition that most of our planning, almost all of our architects have mostly been, not people of color. I think 3% of architects are Black. Native folks, we don't even make the chart. Whenever I get a chance to talk to youth, I'm always trying to encourage them into urban planning, into the fields of architecture, because we need, new perspectives, new voices. And we also have to, and equity means that in these planning processes that we really tear down those barriers and we find ways to really hear from community. And I think we have to be listening to community in order to do that, and getting their ideas on the planning processes. So I think that is, as I approach it, that's one thought. And the other thought would be focus on climate justice. We have to make some big, big changes. We have to swerve. We have to ensure that as we move forward in our city, that we have goals of limiting our carbon emissions, ensuring that our water is clean and our air is clean. And someone asked me a while ago about what I thought about climate justice and what it means for our city. And this is the way I'll answer it, is that I believe we will have climate justice when our Puget Sound is full of orcas, because that means that we have abundant salmon. And that means that our water is clean. And that means that the tribes have been using their wisdom around our salmon and fisheries. And um, and it also means that the air is cleaner, right? For our folks in the South End, for the communities who are impacted with higher rates of asthma because of the dirty air. Like, we have to do better. And I believe that we have to have the leadership that will say, the change has to happen, and it has to happen now. And when we think about the comprehensive plan, that has to have the that depth and understanding leading the way, or we will have failed as a community. And as far as the question of like what we would change, I don't know what I would say. I have to have those lenses. I don't have specifics on what we would change, but look forward, for anyone who has ideas or things that I should be thinking about there. I would very much welcome that.
Great. We're getting a little bit more specific. In the Urbanist interview, you mentioned looking at single family zoning as a place to create more opportunities for different kinds of housing. And in many ways, I think a lot of people think they've become gated communities when the average house is over $800,000.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? And because in some people's minds, it means just duplexes, in other people's minds, it means 4 floors in a corner store. So when you're thinking about that, what are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about all and the both. And, I think that we're going to have to see what happens in the neighborhoods and what is actually possible. For me and my family, we bought a house out of North Seattle 14 years ago, and we're very fortunate to be able to do it. It is has a mother-in-law, so we've always been able to rent it out. And the only way we were able to do this is because of my sister, who helped us buy this house. And I think about it all the time because I feel so fortunate that we are able to do it, but we can't afford anything else now. We just can't, and it's kind of small. It is small for us, but that's just the way it's going to be. And I'm really just grateful that we have a house. And so when I think about that broader picture of what it means to think about our rezoning, I think that we're going to have to do both, more duplexes, more fourplexes, more, buildings that have 4 or 5 stories. We're gonna have to look at the different zoning requirements around the heights of buildings. I think that there's just a lot of potential and opportunity there. We're building a project out in Lake City that is a project that's all made up with panels. And I'm excited about the possibility of getting some of that kind of housing built much faster. That is another issue that we have in our portfolio right now. So it's going to be quite the ride, but I'm open to leadership from groups like you all, leadership from the community to make those decisions and to put all those options on the table.
Great, thanks. So it seemed like you have a really great vision for dealing with the homelessness situation, with rapid housing to begin with, and then providing long-term housing as we can. Either way, both the short-term and especially the long-term is going to cost a lot of money. How do you think proposal we can pay for this and make it happen?
Yeah, I think that that is the $1 million question, right? Or maybe we should say $100 million question, or more. I think it'll probably cost us more than the 100 million too. The reports have said different things, but I think that it's going to be collaboration with business. That could look different ways. That could look like a tax. That could look like an investment. That could look like a levy. I mean, that could look like in many different ways, but I'm committed to sitting with business and sitting with neighborhoods to come to some good understanding of what that should look like. I'm also really excited about the idea of public-private partnership because I've seen it work really well in the projects that I've done. I know a lot of the players. I'm ready to jump in there and to invite them into this vision of what affordable housing really looks like. We have a lot of permanent supportive housing we need to build to work with some of our folks who are chronically homeless. We need to figure out ways to make that a little cheaper, to continue to evolve the housing first principle, which I deeply believe in. And I'm really excited too to also think of other ways that we can build housing cheaper that comes from a cultural perspective, right? I've talked about this earlier that we have very little diversity in those fields. And I often think about like, what would the Native communities idea from, the Coast Salish communities idea of housing look like? Could it look like an SRO that's in a longhouse? Maybe. Is that a lot cheaper? Absolutely. And does it work for the community? Yes. So I think that having, my lens on this is different and will give us that new perspective. I'm also just incredibly open to ideas from the community. I've done nothing in my career that hasn't been done with community, listening to people, implementing those ideas and going. So it's time for us to truly take this seriously and get out there, find those dollars and make it happen. Oh, the final thing I'll say too is that we also have a friend in the White House, right? I feel like he's my friend. And I will be, we got to have shovel ready projects. We need to have, when those stimulus dollars come in, we need to be ready. We need to be identifying, those places where we can build more affordable housing. I've been, I'm in the affordable housing world. So I recently had conversations with some folks and we were talking about areas that we know that are flat, that we can build, modular style housing or panel built housing as soon as possible to get this up and going. And so that's the way I think is to do it as quickly as we can and as efficiently as we can. I'm also, I'm an executive director of a nonprofit. You got to watch your budget all the time. So I'll be doing that as well. So thanks for the question. And I'm looking forward to other people's ideas and thoughts on that as well.
Great. Staying on homelessness for just one more question, because it's your life, right? There's been a lot of talk about the Regional Housing Authority, and I know they just hired someone, but that's an area where it seems like people have hoped for a lot of benefit from partnership. And from a Seattle view, it seems like the suburban cities are trying to thwart it, and I don't know what the benefits are just yet. Could you give a little bit of an insider perspective on that and how you would view that as mayor?
Yeah, I mean, it's really complicated, number one, and that's a problem. Like there needs to be much more accountability there. And I have been a part of, putting that Homelessness Authority together because of my position at the time as the co-chair of the Continuum of Care Board, which is previously, it's known as All Home and now has merged into the Regional Homeless Authority. I'm really excited about it. I think that for one, on our governing council, our implementation board, and our advisory committee, those are the three bodies that make up that Regional Homeless Authority. We have the most diversity and perspective from lived experience than we've ever had. And that to me is super exciting because I think that they have some really, they'll hold our system accountable, number one, and two, they have some great ideas for us moving forward. I do think that we have some concern about how we will be working with our suburbs and the cities out there. I'm here to tell you about running for mayor. So I'll tell you that I think I'm the best person for that job. I have great relationships with people out in Auburn and in Bellevue and on Shoreline. I've worked with a lot of them through my work at the All Home Coordinating Board. And we're going to need leadership that can partner, that can figure out ways to get us to the common the common places, and then go from there and continue to evolve in that process. I'm excited about Mark Dones. I know him well. He is a brilliant, brilliant guy. This guy will blow your mind with everything he knows. He's so smart. And also he's just in community. He has a lot of trust within the Lived Experience Coalition. And he was the architect of the Regional Homeless Authority. And so he knows the players. And I think it's going to be very exciting. I hope to work with him as mayor and get this going. I think this is the right time for someone like me with my expertise to be in the mayor's seat. So I'm always optimistic. But I'm cautiously optimistic here. There's a lot of moving parts, and we're gonna have to really work together to help people understand the importance of the regional approach.
Great, thanks. I hope your optimism pays off. I really want to see that work. So switching to transportation. SDOT, Seattle Department of Transportation, is a big agency with lots of responsibility and constituencies, and they're all asking for more money. Mm-hmm. If elected, the nearly $1 billion Move Seattle Transportation Levy would be expiring during your term. Mm-hmm. How do you prioritize spending in the agency, and what would you hope to see in a possible successor levy?
Well, we have to spend some money on our infrastructure, right? Like, I mean, it is kind of blows my mind that we have gotten to this space with the West Seattle Bridge, with Magnolia Bridge, with the conditions of some of our roads. And there's just so much more for us to do. We also have to have vision about getting our whole community to get behind us not being so reliant on fossil fuel transportation. We need to be thinking about electrifying the Seattle fleet and finding ways to really get people feeling comfortable on public transportation. So there is a tremendous amount of work there. I think we have to be really thinking about ways that we use our stimulus dollars that are going to be coming in. I'm excited to work with our senators who both have tremendous levers of power that can help us get money into our infrastructure. And it's something I'm very interested in and look forward to partnering with all of you on. I think that there just has to be someone at the helm at the city who understands that if our infrastructure doesn't work, then we can't do the things that we want to do as a city. We can't achieve our goals of climate justice and housing justice. And so as a leader of a nonprofit that has grown tremendously over the years, I know what it takes to get the management in place, give them the vision and the goals to get done, and ask them to implement it. So I look forward to working with the Seattle Department of Transportation and getting this work done. And I forgot the second part of the question. Sorry.
Oh, is that the Move Seattle levy, which is a big chunk of funding, is going to be up for renewal if you were elected during your term?
Yeah, so I would absolutely be supporting the renewal of the levy and doing more, again, not to repeat myself, but electrifying the fleet, finding ways to create more equity within our transportation system, because there are some people, but this is just not working, the public transportation system, right? A people first transportation system means that no one is stranded with no way to get around. We have to find ways to ensure that it works for low income folks, for BIPOC folks, seniors, youth. It's got to work better. And so there has to be that real lens on as we look for those new dollars. We got to have that lens, and that's what I bring to the table.
Great. I only have so much time, so I'm trying to pick my questions carefully. Well, so in addition to limited money, we have limited space in our right of way, and it's all being competed for between pedestrians, bikes, buses, and cars. How would you go about prioritizing, who gets priority and where?
I mean, not cars. It's gonna be bikes, pedestrians, buses. I guess I don't know how I would, those out of those three, I don't know which one I would prioritize, honestly, but I can tell you one thing, that a people first approach means it's about the people. And I believe that the people who are the most vulnerable in the city around transportation are those folks on the buses, are those folks who are on the street walking, and those folks cycling. I don't know about the cycling. I mean, yeah, I mean, I believe 100% in our our biking community. And the reason I say that is that for a while I was really trying to do line bike. And I love line bike. I support the bikes around the city. But I fell off of it like twice. So klutzy, you guys. That is one thing I will not bring to the mayor, is gracefulness in my human body. So I quit doing bikes. But I am really excited about encouraging that. The one other thing I would add is that, when I was building our project in Pioneer Square, which is right in the heart of Pioneer Square, and I'm thinking about wellness of the community, and I don't know if you guys have been to Tokyo or Japan, but that blew my mind, right? That everyone is on bikes. I'm like, and that's why I was like, I got to get on the line bikes, and then I had to stop. But when you build affordable housing, you have to build that bike room. And I'm like frustrated by that bike room because no one in my community can afford those bikes. And so like we have to be thoughtful about those processes, and how we lose space because we're required to do bikes, but our biking community is not Native homeless people, right? So there are those dilemmas that I'm thinking about, and those are the lenses that I'll be bringing to the community. And my next idea on that one was, so how can we find a way for Lime Bike to give 6 months, or it might be Uber, sorry, whatever biking group we're using, that they could give 6 months of, or maybe we put it in the city, in the transportation budget, right? 6 months of free access to our bikes on the sidewalk for folks who are moving into affordable housing, so that they can feel good about riding those bikes, and that they can understand the mobility. Because I will tell you that I did enjoy it, even though I did fall down. I did enjoy riding those bikes. And we've just got to be creative like that, and think about ways that for communities who are underserved and do not have access to bikes, but yet they have a bike room in their affordable housing, we just can do something cool there. And I just want to continue to innovate around that. So to answer your questions, I'm not going to prioritize cars. I'm going to prioritize public transportation, biking, and pedestrians, and look forward to working with you guys on that.
Great. I know we have kind of a 7:20 hard stop.
Yeah.
But I have a couple more questions I want to sneak in. As a member of the Community Police Commission, you've had a front row seat to the reform of the police. Many people have called for a 50% cut. Many people also want to want there to be an alternative. So when we call 911, the only response option is not an officer with a gun. What do you specifically think our revision public safety system should look like for the city?
Ooh. I love that question. Yes, we have to find ways to change our public safety system. I'm proposing a public safety department. I'm also, as I'm doing figuring out what that looks like, I've also been hearing like community safety department. And we have to find ways to ensure that our folks who are experiencing mental health crises are not, or experiencing, homelessness, are not getting case management, I say in quotes, from a police officer. That is the antithesis to the work of a continuum of care, of supporting that person through the hard time they're going through. I was going through to Pioneer Square at least a couple times a week during the pandemic, right? And there was, it was so harmful the way that we were telling our community members in who are experiencing homelessness, and all of us, right, that the way we will combat COVID, right, was to wash our hands. Everyone's saying wash our hands, and yet in Pioneer Square, we shut down all of our services. There was no place for people to wash their hands. And so people, the reason I use that example is people's mental health just escalated and escalated and escalated. And I remember driving down and it was like 6:45 in the morning and I had the keys to open the door. And there was this person on the side of the street who was just wailing in anguish. And I looked at her and I thought, well, I could try to go over and see what's going on, but I didn't have anyone with me. So you got to have best practice of 2 people. And also I thought, what am I going to do? I can't do anything. And so we have to change that system in Seattle so that if someone sees that person, experiencing that terrible mental anguish of, of just suffering, that they have someone to call. I'm envisioning, an army of mental health workers, an army of community street ambassadors. I shouldn't say army. That's the wrong metaphor, but a lot of people who are down there to support all of us so that this is a beautiful city that thrives for our homeless community. And when someone is experiencing mental health anguish and they're down on Alaska Way, that we don't, that we're not, and Seattle Police Department is not prepared with the right kind of tools, that they get shot by the police just because they're having a really hard time. We have to do better. I am infuriated by that. And so I have a lot of vision about ways and plans about ways that we can work on the mental health access for our community. I have seen social workers de-escalate people with knife, like in 30 seconds. Like there are methods out there, but we haven't had the political will or the desire to really get it done. And I do have work with community. The final thing I'll say is that there are community-led solutions that are brilliant. Let's hear from them. Let's increase groups like community passageways and the Mid Ambassador program and other, youth-led initiatives. Like there's just some really cool things that we could be doing that we're not doing. And I look forward to implementing those ideas.
Wonderful. 2 more.
Okay.
One's a really easy one.
Okay.
Let's start this. If elected, you'd be the first Indigenous mayor and only the 3rd BIPOC person as mayor. And that's counting Bruce Harrell, who was there for a week.
Okay. So normalize Bruce Harrell and Colleen Echohawk. I'm just going to say.
Yeah. And the city's obviously had a deeply troubled relationship with the BIPOC community. It's named after Chief Seattle, but the tribe is not even federally recognized. It banned Native people from city limits. It chased out the Chinese. It redlined and destroyed neighborhoods. And Black and Indigenous people are hugely disproportionately represented in those experiencing homelessness. How would your administration address this history and try to begin healing these wounds?
Well, that's the easy one?
No, that's not the easy one's after that.
Okay. Well, the reason it's not easy is because there's so many ideas and so many things that you covered. And I would say that in a big picture world, the main thing is that I come from that community. I understand them. I'm not going to say I understand everyone, of course, but I have a good lens for that. And so my administration would be focused on a race and equity lens on everything we do. There is a lot of work for us to do to think about gentrification and the redlining practices. I have been working with the community preference policy for a while now with the Office of Civil Rights. My projects are all focus on affirmative marketing to the Native community. And I think that those are 2 good policies, but we need to do more and to ensure that we are finding ways to stop the gentrification and bring in our communities of color back into the city. I think that downtown right now is super interesting. Like, well, what could we do there? And, it's really not at this point in time, not practical to turn in office buildings into housing. But maybe there's maybe one of you has a good idea on how we can do that and make it cheaper. I thought about, opportunities when remember when Columbia Sportwear decided that they weren't going to come back to downtown and everyone was so sad. And I just thought to myself, like, man, I have never been able to afford one item. I've gotten jackets from my kids at a thrift store that were Columbia, and I thought that was like such a great win. And so that's a lens I will bring to the city. This city should thrive for our, and business should thrive for our Black, Indigenous people of other people of color communities. And that's just one example. You asked me a big, several things there, but that's just one example of the way that I see the world and the way that I would bring and what I would bring to that office. I still was final, but one more quick thing. I think in the first couple of years, what I would hope would happen is the gatekeeping has decreased at City Hall. And that people feel that it is the City Hall for everyone. That when you come into City Hall, you go to the mayor's office, you feel like you are part of the family and you belong there. And I feel that way because I often have not felt that way there. You know, when Councilmember Juarez got elected, you know, she's an old friend of my family's. I felt like all of a sudden something changed because I felt like this is somebody who knows me and knows where I'm coming from. And so that is something I think is a real passion of mine, to break down the gatekeeping. So it's just not the same group of folks who've been controlling City Hall for year after year after year, but it's people like me, it's people like you all, it's the Black community. We have to change that. And that's what I would bring. I'm gonna have 2 more minutes. I gotta go to my daughter's birthday dinner, you guys. I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much. Well, here's the easy one.
Okay.
If people out there heard what you said and said, that's my candidate, that's who I want to support, what can they do to support you, to help you? What can they do to get involved in your campaign?
I love the question. You can go to our website, Echohawk for Seattle, and you can donate your democracy vouchers. I mean, that's the number one thing. I'm so excited to say that we are really far ahead. I don't have the exact numbers ahead of me, but we're doing so well. We're number one, and that honestly, it just warms my heart, because sometimes I think, you know, I'm probably my consulting team is probably cringing about what I'm going to say. Other Native woman run for mayor. So sometimes I feel like, should I really do this? But when I look at all those democracy vouchers that come in and I see all the people who are signed up to be volunteers, we have 200 people who have volunteered to be a part of our campaign. We have people who are working 20 and 30 and 40 hours. And if you guys are listening, I'm so grateful for you. I really have tears in my eyes. It's unbelievable to have this kind of support, because this city deserves leadership that is going to put our community at the forefront and say that the kind of unbelievable racism and not putting our homeless community at the forefront and allowing, you know, 3,000 to 4,000 people right now tonight to sleep outside. I've had enough of it. And that's why I'm running for mayor. I hope that you can join our cause and be a part of this journey with us. It is so fascinating. It's sometimes fun for me. A lot of times fun when I get together with the volunteers and when I get together with folks like you all, because you know, I have just so much that I want to do for all of us and in partnership with you all. So that's just me. I'd love for you to join us in this journey. The democracy vouchers are making the huge difference. We've raised over $300,000. The cap is $400,000. So wow, unbelievable. And I can see my friend Paul just puts there are tricycles. I don't know, that just came up on my feed. Oh, I see what you mean, exactly, Paul. I do need a tricycle. Maybe if I'm elected mayor, there'll be a tricycle for me to ride, because I fall down. I have to go to my daughter's birthday dinner. Thank you all so much for the time. And I'm so grateful for all of you being here on this call. You know, reach out to me. I will throw my number into the chat. If I can find a way to the chat, and you feel free to text me and call me, text me, because you know, the day's full, but we'll make the time.
Thank you so much for joining. And thank you for taking time out of your daughter's birthday. And win or lose, thank you so much for your passion and your vision and your work for the city of Seattle.
Thank you guys.
And we can give a virtual
all your good work too. I'll be honest, I didn't really read Urbanist until I started running for mayor. I've read articles here and there, but I'm really enjoying it. And I'm enjoying I'm just enjoying getting to be learning a ton from you all. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
And Yeah, thanks everyone for joining tonight. I hope it was informative, inspiring. Yeah, and we'll see you next time.